Hello friends, and welcome to a very exciting topic known as knowledge management. Well, we've heard about different kinds of management, but what is knowledge management? It's something unheard of, right? Knowledge is knowledge. So what has it got to do with management at all? Let us look in this session what exactly is knowledge management and how it is fast emerging as a very important field which all organizations are looking at today. And it's going to get so important in the future that organizations and products and services are going to be driven by this aspects completely. So what is knowledge? What do you all think is knowledge? People have different meanings of knowledge, different definitions of knowledge, or different understanding or perception of knowledge. Well, some of the things which I've put here, you could relate to it. It's the result of perception, learning and reasoning. Well, you perceive something, you are reasoning, you are also learning all the time, and the sum total or outcome of all of that, what comes out or comes forward, is knowledge. Very simple. Also, this term knowledge has come from philosophical roots, because all knowledge was supposed to be philosophy at that time. So if you look at any great philosopher has commented on knowledge or has a definition for knowledge, and have studied knowledge and how to imbibe it and spread it. So over here, one of these definitions is justified true belief. The great philosopher Plato has put this definition of justified true belief. And earlier, the study of knowledge was known as epistemology. Of course, this definition no longer is used today, or this terminology, but you can imagine that even in those ancient times, it was actually a great field of formal study, and which is coming back again today as what is known as knowledge management. So what is knowledge, or how would you define knowledge? Well, whatever you think in terms of your common sense is actually the definition of knowledge. But to give an idea, it is any understanding of a person, of any fact, or of any situation which you could have got from any means, whether formal, informal, structured, systematic. It could be your inherent skill or experience, or it could be an acquired skill, or through theory. All that you obtain and gain is knowledge, essentially, is what it means. So knowledge is nothing but a continuous input which you process or learn or experience, and then which you retain with yourself, is knowledge. Okay, so knowledge is ongoing, it is an ever-going process. Knowledge learning is ever-growing, and therefore knowledge management obviously will be an ongoing process till you die. So what is knowledge management in a very formalized way, and what it means and what it is looked at? So knowledge management is actually a range of strategies and practices which you adopt in an organization, okay, to identify, create, represent, distribute, and enable adoption of insights and experiences. Now these experiences or practices or processes could be part of an individual or part of the organization itself, because if you are doing something for a long period of time, it becomes part of the organization itself. That means the organization has imbibed it. Similarly, a lot of times you learn something and you keep following it, you would have imbibed something completely in yourself. And that is knowledge management. The other way to look at knowledge management is, knowledge is that which is lost unless deliberately maintained and communicated. What does it mean? If I'm learning something or I've gained something, I have to ensure I hold on to that. Not only do I hold on, I need to keep developing on that. And that what I've gained, which is in terms of knowledge, has no meaning at all unless I'm communicating it or passing it on to other people. Otherwise, it has no meaning at all. Therefore, it is essential in knowledge management to not only imbibe, to learn, to maintain, to enhance, and also to communicate or transfer that knowledge to other persons or organizations or individuals, as the case may be. Otherwise, it is nothing, right? So that is knowledge management, or the definition of knowledge management. So how did this knowledge management come about? This terminology got coined in 1991 as the term knowledge management, what is known as KM. And it got started to be taught officially in courses like administration, management, information technology, and a lot of other fields today are adopting this more and more, because everything today relates to knowledge and how you maintain and enhance that knowledge. Without knowledge, you can't run any business. So it is becoming very, very critical. In 1999, the term personal knowledge management was also coined. Organizational knowledge is fine, but organizations consist of individuals. So if individuals don't upgrade their knowledge or have that knowledge, the organization is obviously impacted. And therefore, personal knowledge management also becomes an important facet of this whole theme called knowledge management. Now, why do we need knowledge management? Especially today, with the advent of the digital age, a lot of e-commerce and networking, what is happening is everyone has access to lots of information. Everyone is bombarded with lots of information, and not only access and ease of access, but speed. Today, everything you want is at a click. You just go onto the internet, you access your office intranet, you call someone, you message someone, and everything is available. Now, with this kind of speed and this kind of access, you could have what is known as an information overkill also. And therefore, it is critical why you need knowledge management. Not only to maintain that flow, but manage what is coming in, and also to gain new knowledge very fast, which is relevant, which we will talk about as we go along. Next is the focus is gradually shifting from long-term business relationships. If I was a customer and I had a supplier and we would be working together for 10-15 years, but now if you're looking at a B2C model or a business to customer model, the customer is impersonal. He's probably dealing with you over the internet or through e-commerce, or he's a walk-in in a store. There is no touch. Therefore, no relationship can build up. The customer can go anywhere. He's getting the best service or the best product. And therefore, it becomes crucial for an organization to manage their knowledge levels. Knowledge of the customer, of what the customer wants, of what the market is all about. Only when you have that will you be able to gain a customer and retain a customer. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble. The other aspect which we will discuss a little later is what is known as shelf life of knowledge. We will see what shelf life is as we go along. Knowledge now is the basis of any product or service. If you want to create a product or a car, how do you think a car gets manufactured? You need knowledge of making that car, right? You need design specialists who know how to design it. That is pure knowledge. You know someone how to tweak or work on an engine. That is again knowledge. What gets actually manufactured or produced is just the execution part of it, and which is honestly much easier today. Therefore, knowledge is becoming more and more important for any product or service. It is the basis for every single product or service that you look at. If you don't have the right kind of knowledge, you will not be able to deliver what is required. And obviously, it is also great for personal growth. If you don't have the right kind of knowledge and are not upgrading yourself all the time, you will not grow personally and professionally. For example, if you are in the information technology industry, newer and newer software programs are coming in. If you are not going to upgrade yourself, you will get lost out. There was a time where people used to do all programming only on things like BASIC and COBOL and then moved on to Fortran. Now, if you never moved on beyond that, you would not be surviving. You would be out of a job or doing something completely different. So a constant upgradation is also implied when we talk about knowledge management. Now we come to a very interesting concept which has been researched, which is known as shelf life of knowledge. Imagine that knowledge was a product, a tangible product. It's like a box which is kept on a shelf. How long would it remain there, either without getting spoiled or without it losing its utility? So you could keep using it. You could put your hand in the cookie jar like in the box and keep eating that cookie. For how long could you eat those cookies before the cookies got over or they got spoiled? Similarly with knowledge. If you have one technology or one idea or one knowledge which you were working on and which you think is profitable and it's great, what will happen is before 1960, This particular idea or technology or process, the way it is, would run for close to 22 years. The research has said 21.8 years. It would keep running and keep making you money. So you did not really worry. The 20-year time span. And we've seen that. Some of our old products, some of our old cars, the old scooters, they ran for 2 to 3 decades, right? Now, that time span has come down to 3.2 years only. 3.2 years, which means if I have a great idea or a product or a process or a technology, it is going to remain profitable for me for just a little over 3 years. So if I'm not constantly upgrading and managing my knowledge and getting newer and newer knowledge items, so to speak, I'm going to be out of business. Now, why it becomes even more critical. This 3.2 years is expected to go down even further. As the world and the economy keeps expanding, what is happening on the technology and knowledge side is there are more and more findings which are happening at exponential rates. Earlier, your scientific advancements or behavioral or human related advancements were happening gradually in what is known as arithmetic progression. Now, these are happening in geometric progression because there are multiple teams working all across on various aspects. So, you will have newer and newer technologies coming out faster and faster with lower and lower what you know as shelf life. So, some people say this is going to go down to even 1.5 years. That is why even in tangible products like detergents or toothpaste or bikes or motor vehicles and cars, you find that at least once every 2 years there is a relaunch which happens with some changes, with an engine change or a cosmetic change, because the knowledge has changed. Even the customer understanding has changed. Now, if you're not making those changes, people would stop buying your products. And you will see this with increasing frequency as time goes by. And therefore, shelf life of knowledge is so very important today. What this means is that knowledge has to be managed very well, not just acquired. What kind of knowledge will you acquire? You don't know. So we are talking about management. If you're not managing it well, retaining it well and utilizing it well to make profits, obviously, you know what is going to happen. An organization will collapse. There is no question of running a company if you're not managing your knowledge. What does it mean for the organization? Obviously, as I just mentioned, it's your key to survival, because if you're not managing your knowledge well, you're not surviving. Also important over here is the right kind of personnel selection. By right kind of personnel selection, we mean get those kind of people who have the right kind of knowledge which your organization requires at that point of time. If you're working on a very high technology product platform in information technology field, you need someone with a specific skill set. Please hire that person is what it means. And then train others within the organization, and then it becomes institutionalized till the next change is required. And that's what is meant by personnel selection. So a lot of organizations therefore pay a lot of money to hire from outside, the assumption being these person or persons will come with the right kind of knowledge set which is required for that job role. Next comes a very important and fast growing field known as knowledge engineering. Knowledge engineering deals with the systematization of knowledge in a fashion which can be used by computing programs. So, a lot of advances have been made on this. It first started with the heuristic program, which is the HPP in Stanford in 1965. What it did was a computer program started identifying the structure of formulas of organic compounds. So this was the first experiment which was successful, where a computer would do the activity what humans were doing till then on pen and paper. This was followed by Mycin in 1972, again in Stanford. It was a medical system which gave advice on treatment for blood infections and meningitis. So it was an experiment which said, can it take away the diagnosis from a doctor or a personal physician? And it worked very well. If you go to these advances today, you're talking about hybrid computers. We are talking about thinking computers. We are talking about computers which will probably have a strand of human DNA inside, so that the thinking process becomes faster and quicker. So a lot of these functions which are getting more and more complex will be taken over by computers. So knowledge engineering is closely linked to computer technology, hardware as well as software. We don't know eventually where it's going to reach, but you can be sure that a lot of our decisions and a lot of our life is surely going to be taken over by computing technology. So that comes up with what are the types of knowledge that we are talking about. We can categorize knowledge based on what it involves into certain kind of distinctions or divisions. So you have 6 kind of categories which I have put down. You could of course list them in various different types. You could also have various other categories. Okay, again this list is not exhaustive, but it gives you a fair idea of putting knowledge in a framework so that we understand how to tackle what you come across in your daily life. So there is an empirical knowledge, there is a formalized knowledge, institutional knowledge, market knowledge, product knowledge, and organizational knowledge. Now one by one, let us look at each one of these and what they actually mean. Empirical knowledge is nothing but knowledge derived from empirical data and observations. For example, if I have done a market survey which tells me 80% of the population prefer organic shampoos, so that data is empirical, where you've collected and collated data and someone has told you that so many people told me this is what I like. So it's empirical. It is also intuitive or very obvious. Black color is not white. Yes, black is not white, or vice versa. So again it becomes empirical. And also very demonstrative in nature, where you are drawing an inference, but a very logical inference to arrive at a conclusion. For example, sun is similar to fire because both are hot or both consist of the same elements. So that again becomes some knowledge you've obtained through maybe observation, followed by a logical inference. So all these 3 are what an empirical knowledge is all about. And we use all these 3 in our personal lives. We also use these in organizations. Formalized knowledge. Now whatever knowledge you get through empirical observations or through intuition or data, you will formalize it. What do you mean by formalize it? You make it available to people in a form or fashion which is understandable. In the earlier example of the shampoo, 80% people said they like organic shampoos. However, it becomes formalized when we say 80% of people like organic shampoos is what the data shows. However, our shampoo is also organic, so there is a great chance that 80% people will like our shampoo. So now you have taken it to a formalized level. Based on this, you can start doing product development or marketing strategies, etc., etc. But if you did not have this knowledge, you would not be able to do anything. So you have formalized the setting for this knowledge. This is also knowledge which concerns a structured way of planning, designing and product development activities in a very formal setting. So this is what is known as formalized knowledge. There is something known as institutional knowledge. Once you've got data, it's also probably formalized. You have to institutionalize it, which means you have to imbibe it and make it part of the organization. So what happens in this? You start making process manuals. You start doing training programs. You start communicating through the company intranet. You start putting up posters. You start taking people through in batches on certain critical processes or certain new things which the organization wants to do. So what we are slowly doing is we are institutionalizing what maybe a small group of people know, 1 or 2 people know, into what the whole organization knows. This also happens related to environmental issues and legal liabilities. If there are certain environmental issues and legal liabilities, you'll start taking that knowledge inside and ensuring you operate in a very compliant fashion. So that is again another example of institutionalizing knowledge. Next is market knowledge, knowledge of the customer. the psychographics, the demographics, what customer segment are you targeting, what are their preferences, what are they looking for and looking at, what is the assessment of brand equity, what is the knowledge of distribution and sales channels, of shopkeepers, who's going to sell your product and why. All that comes under market knowledge. Also included here is competitive information, knowledge which you get from your competitors, which is through the marketplace. Next is the products knowledge. By products knowledge we mean what are the methods of manufacturing, what are the operational processes to be followed, what are the concepts of product, what kind of quality, what kind of quantity you need to produce, product design and development, the know-how for the products and services which can be shared. So all that comes under product. Anything related to manufacturing or delivery or modifying or creating a product or services comes under product knowledge. Next is organization knowledge. What does the organization know about products, services, markets, way of functioning, etc. is all organization knowledge. Very similar to institutional knowledge. However, only thing is this knowledge is owned by the organization in that sense. So whatever you've gained, you retain within the organization. Now you have looked at these few types of knowledge from an organizational perspective. The next most important thing is to create a structure of managing this knowledge. Very briefly, this is a diagrammatic representation of what happens. You need to have a strategy for knowledge management in an organization. Anything which is not done formally will not happen or not work. So let's say you have a knowledge management strategy with a panel, for example, or with a body of people who are constantly and consciously monitoring it and delivering it. In that, what you need to do first is need to ensure that you get the right kind of people with the right kind of knowledge. The ones who don't have, make sure they acquire that knowledge through a transference process or through learning or through training. Then you imbibe it in the organization. Next is you create a conscious culture of knowledge where you're constantly encouraging people to find new ways of acquiring knowledge, different kinds of relevant knowledge, and how to spread that knowledge. So the culture becomes very important. Once you've done that, you need to have a process. So you've encouraged people, you've got the right kind of people, you have encouraged them, you're getting in the right kind of knowledge by creating a nice culture. You need to have a process to deliver that. By deliver it to the marketplace, deliver it to the shop floor, deliver it to everyone in the organization. So process has to be prepared or made, which runs consciously and in a formalized way. And next, we need enabling technologies. How is that knowledge going to be disseminated or maintained or created? So here we talk about the technology piece coming in. It could be through intranet, it could be through softwares, it could be through data management or internal data concepts. So you need to create this kind of a structure to have an effective knowledge management organization. The key over here obviously is knowledge transfer. If I have the knowledge and I'm not transferring it or letting people know, then it is not knowledge. As we had seen earlier in one of the definitions, that is what knowledge means. Something which can be consciously maintained and communicated. Both are important. So here communication or transference is the key. Knowledge can be transferred in two ways, primarily on-the-job training and off-the-job training. On-the-job training examples are apprenticeships which used to happen in earlier days. Even today, you have some people at the lower levels who are just put on the shop floor to observe and start working along with an experienced person. Now, what are the risks associated with that? Very obviously, if the person is in training, he will make mistakes. So there could be some damage, some quality loss, some production loss, or some service delivery effect. Fair enough. The next one is off-the-job training, where you take the person off the job, get the person into a classroom scenario, okay, and train for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. theoretical inputs or whatever inputs that are there. Here it is much more robust. However, the practical aspect is missing. So this is a drawback of off-the-job training. Also, what you learn off the job, you don't retain everything. So this is another risk which you would face. So this is the pros and cons of on-the-job training and off-the-job training. So now we come to the cost of knowledge transfer. What is the cost? First is obviously your education. All of us have studied. You all are studying or doing management through this particular course. Now you're paying some fees. So that is the cost. The organization or the institute is preparing all these videos and giving. So they are also incurring some cost which is involved. If you are doing an off-the-job training, there is a cost involved of trainers, of taking you off the job. So there is a productivity loss in money terms or monetary terms. There is an on-the-job training cost also. As we said that there could be some quality issues, etc., which reduces productivity. So there is a cost. Now you have to incur these kind of costs for knowledge transference. What we need to take care of is to ensure that the cost you've incurred versus the benefit you are getting, there is a decent gap. So you do what is known as a cost-benefit analysis. If by training a bunch of 25 workers, for example, on a new production process, you are incurring 200,000 rupees. But by doing all this intensive training, if your productivity gains translates to only 250,000 rupees, you need to ask yourself, is it really worth all the time and effort that you're putting in? So that is a critical element of knowledge transference cost, which is cost-benefit analysis. There is also something known as knowledge selection risk. What happens over here? You are trying to do a knowledge transference. However, the learner might fail or he may not imbibe all that is required to be imbibed, which is true for any education or training program. You have people who score very well in exams. You have people who score very poorly in exams also. You also have people who fail at times. So this knowledge transference is obviously an issue. Knowledge may not produce expected profit is what we spoke about. You think you have a great idea, you're going gung-ho, you're going all out in the marketplace. Case in example was the Betamax video format. There was a big war earlier. Now that Betamax video format, after spending so much of money, did not really work. Of course, it did not lose too much of money, but profits were practically zero. So this is what we need to know. Also, knowledge becomes obsolete very fast. Why does it become obsolete? Due to changing customer preferences. Well, it happens all the time. Today I like something, tomorrow I like something else. So I stop buying your product or service and go to someone who is offering me that product or service. Competition. If competition is strong, which today is in practically every field, what are they going to do? Competition is going to go all out and try to gain market share. In this case, they will start introducing new concepts, new technologies, new services, and you may lose out in the bargain. Research and development and new technology or methods is another aspect to be looked at. Someone is doing it, you are not doing it, yes, you face a big risk. If you are doing it constantly, you will probably be a step ahead of the marketplace. So what do you do to ensure this does not happen? So you need to look at the right kind of opportunities, observe them, see them, and go after those opportunities. Of course, it's always not easy to see what is going to click tomorrow or what is not going to click. But to give an idea, there was a big shift which happened suddenly from mainframe computing to personal computers. At that time, IBM was the leader in mainframe computing, and they suddenly lost crazily and started making huge losses because they did not foresee this trend of personal computing, which got taken over or got introduced by Apple in a very big way, followed by a lot of other organizations. Of course, eventually they did come back with personal computing. We all had cassettes before, which you used to listen to. Now, if you ask anyone today, especially the younger generation who are below 10, 12, they don't even know what a cassette is. It's all digital storage media. You have disk, you have USB, you have pen drives, and so on. Tomorrow, probably even disk will disappear. You don't know, and that's the way it's headed. XML web services, which removed a human interface from internet link services, is completely change the way of e-commerce as the way we know it. So this is another path-breaking technology. And the other shift which is slowly happening is online versus offline business. As time goes by, urbanization increases and more people have less time to get out. Online businesses will start growing even more than what they are today. Also, what is happening is penetration levels, even in countries like India, for computers are increasing at a very rapid pace. And in the next few years, you'll see internet, your infrastructure related to internet reaching the remotest corners. When that happens, we have to be there in the online space. So that could be a trend. So you have to identify these kind of trends, what are the knowledge requirements related to those trends, and go after them. So as we said, what are the risks which are related to it? One is the time cost, the money cost, and the efficiency cost. We've discussed all three of these. And one is obviously the low return cost. The money that you get may not be as much as you would require. How do you manage now? The knowledge part of it is what we are going to speak about. There are 6 steps to it. One is visualize knowledge, enhance demand, predict demand, match demand and supply, create knowledge, and have a supply chain. We will quickly look at each one of these on how to manage knowledge. So first is visualize. Look at future scenarios. What do you think the future is going to be like? What is the technology which is going to be required? What are the services which are going to be required? Brainstorming. Also get into a little bit of daydreaming. So you see something in the future and try and work out what kind of knowledge will you require today to equip yourself to compete tomorrow. Enhance demand. What you have to get is you have to push people proactively to gain more and more knowledge, maybe of different types also at times. How do you do things better? How will you launch better or newer products and services? How will you get and retain more skilled employees and make the ones who are already there even more skillful? So you are demanding more and more knowledge. If you are not consciously demanding that, yes, you will be somewhere there, but you may lose out in the future. You also need to predict demand. You have to do what is known as what if scenarios. If this happens, what? If that happens, what? You have to get into trend analysis. What are the demographic trends? What are psychographic trends? What are economic trends? How is spending changing? How are family circles changing? All that will get you a fair idea of where the world is headed or the marketplace is headed. What are the age groups? How do they purchase? So on and so forth. So this becomes a critical aspect of knowledge management. Then you have to match the demand and supply. So you have to push to develop technologies which you think people will need. If you are not doing that, you are going to lose the race. Also, you have to keep introducing the desired kind of products and services at great speed, and also make your own products and services redundant after a point of time and launch something better, not wait for competition. All this requires constant inflow and management of knowledge at all points of time. How do you create knowledge? Example is research and development. So have research and development teams which are working on newer concepts and technologies all the time. This also works in the service industry where you're constantly looking at newer and newer ways of delivering your processes. Also keep testing yourself all the time. That if you think this is a new technology, a new process, is it working? Put some benchmarks, do market surveys, do test products, or also try and work on new or never before products or services in the marketplace. This is something very futuristic. Try it today. You know it is not the product of today, but you'll get a good idea where you are headed. So that's how you create knowledge. Next, most important is always have and maintain a supply chain for knowledge. What do you mean by supply chain? Standardization. Remember in one of the earlier slides, we spoke about institutionalizing. Yes, that is what we are talking about. You need to constantly institutionalize knowledge, standardize it, have constant training, learning, development, have refresher trainings, prepare standard operating procedures, operational audits to see that everyone is compliant to what they've learned and are implementing it as well. All this is called creating a supply chain for knowledge. The other aspect of supply chain is assessment of employees' knowledge. You think you're doing so many great things, however, employee should be on the same page. So you assess his knowledge and accordingly give him a task or accordingly reward the employee. So what some organizations have started doing is they benchmark yourself to a job role outside which is similar and put a market value to it, which is done by an external agency. So if you are paid 5 lakh rupees today and you do an external assessment and it comes out to 4 lakhs, then you look at the gaps, or it could be 6 lakhs, or you look at your gaps. Then you sit with that person, identify the needs, find the right kind of fitment, and then provide the right knowledge inputs so that job role again comes back to market levels as required. If the job is overpaid compared to market, find the right kind of fitment for that kind of skill set. So that is another important aspect of supply chain. The next most important one is effective internal data management. A lot of organizations really go wrong over here. Either you're doing too much or revealing too much, or you're trying to have too many controls. What happens is the more data you have, or the optimal level of data you have, the employees can function very well or in a much better fashion. For example, things like access to systems, whether restricted access, medium access, what is required for a person, for example, sitting at the front line. What is the kind of data and knowledge he will need? So that is what it's talking about. How do you keep enhancing your data? How do you upgrade your data management systems and maintain them? All this becomes part of your supply chain management. To summarize, knowledge is the key to success, and therefore knowledge management has to be done with everyone at all points of time. You have to acquire and manage the right kind of knowledge with us. Because with an information overload, it's very easy to get 25 so-called interesting concepts, but none of them are useful to you. So what's the point? You have to manage the cost of knowledge and then create a robust supply line which is on ready without getting affected or cut off at any point of time. So wish you lots of knowledge. Thank you.